Welcome back to another episode of the Mana Drain Podcast. I'm your host, Logan, and with me is my good friend, Christian. Christian, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing awesome, man. I'm just happy to be here drinking on some lemonade, wink, wink.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, when this episode airs tomorrow, I'm excited about Dominaria United, and when this episode airs, the set should be fully released the day after. So we're basically just going to go over our favorite cards in each color and talk about their impact and playability in the Commander format.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So let's kick it off with white.
Do you
want to go first to talk about your favorite white card?
Oh, yeah, dude. There's not a lot, It's a relatively not super overwhelming card.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of good. It's a temporary lockdown. I'm super high on this card if you guys couldn't tell. It's a 1 and 2 white enchantment. When temporary lockdown enters the battlefield, exile each non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less until temporary lockdown leaves the battlefield. I really like this card. I'm going to throw it in my Zur list. Really good ETB stacks piece. It gets rid of pretty much every low to the ground combo that people are playing on permanents right now.
Yeah. And not only that, it also hits everyone's artifact fast mana. So mana crypt, soul ring, stuff like that.
Creature-based strategies will get hit really hard by this if they're trying to ramp out with creatures, Land of War Elves, Birds of Paradise, all the good stuff.
Right.
Yes, if you're playing some fast artifacts yourself, you'll get kind of hit by this, but I feel like if you're playing this, you're playing more of a Grand Arbiter style deck. I know I said I'm going to play this in my Zur list, but it'll only be played in Zur as a last-ditch effort to try and stop someone from using their Underworld Breach.
Right.
I think that in a Grand Arbiter strategy, though, it definitely will hose a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then being able to, if more 2-drops enter the battlefield, just blink it really quick.
That's easily doable. And not only that, it's any non-land permanent. So if someone has a Rest in Peace that's messing with you or something like that, this will hit that as well.
All your treasure tokens, your clue tokens.
That's another big one, tokens.
So if someone's going wide with token strategy and Selesnya or something like that, this will hose them. It's basically a 3-drop board wipe for low to the ground decks, which is kind of the meta that I've been playing in recently. So definitely a card I'm high on.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see what your white card is, though, Christian. I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah. I don't play a lot of white in Commander, but one of the cards that stuck out to me is called Sarah Paragon. It is 2 and 2 white for a creature angel. She is a 3/4 with flying. And she has, once during each of your turns, you may play a land card from your graveyard or cast a permanent spell with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard. If you do, it gains, when this permanent is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, exile it, and you gain 2 life. So this is basically another Luris type effect with a little bit of downside of whenever that permanent would be put into a graveyard from the battlefield, it gets exiled. And there's plenty of ways to get around that. Like if you're playing a Brago list or something, you can blink those permanents and they'll lose that line of text. But yeah, like Luris is strong enough to be banned in multiple formats. So another copy is going to be awesome for the decks that want it. And yeah, like I'm pretty high on this card.
Yeah, it's I think if you're playing the Brago equipment style decks, we had mentioned in some talks behind the scenes, that Stoneforge Mystic is really good to grab with this card. Even if you aren't able to get a trigger off to remove the exile text, getting 2 searches out of it is really good.
Yeah.
And possibly an equip too.
Yeah, even like just being able to replay one of your fetches on a turn is going to be really nice.
Especially in white, it gives you that quote unquote ramp factor. You're not catching up and you're not necessarily ramping. But you definitely could stay consistent, which is more times than not even harder than trying to ramp. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and that's like another reason why I picked this card. It's Lurrus with downside, but in mono white. So if you want to play Lurrus type effects in your deck and you don't want to run black, now you don't have to.
Yeah. I could see this as pretty decent in like an Odric deck. It's not super powerful of a deck, but Odric, obviously the Odric that when you moved at the beginning of your upkeep or when you move to combat, like all keywords that he has on him or other creatures have on him share with each other.
Yeah.
So definitely an amazing white card for 4. And it's better than a Sarah Angel too, with an even better effect on it.
Sarah Angel is a 4/4 with vigilance and flying, I believe.
For 5?
For 4.
Oh, for 4.
Yeah, so it is a little weaker, like body and like keyword wise, but another deck I was thinking of where this would easily fit in is the Helioid combo stacks CDH list. Just being able to replay your stacks pieces and combo pieces from your graveyard is gonna be really useful in mono white.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree with that.
Yeah. So why don't we move on to the blue cards? What did you pick up today?
Ooh, for blue, I'm gonna have to go with Defiler of Dreams. It's I really like the Defiler cards, or the Defiler, I guess, rotation of cards from this set.
Yeah, the Phyrexian Worm cycle.
Yep. It's
is that one a worm?
No, this is a Sphinx.
Oh, okay.
But this is Defiler of Dreams, 3 and 2 blue. Creature, Phyrexian Sphinx. Flying. As an additional cost to cast blue permanent spells, you may pay 2 life. Those spells cost 1 blue less to cast if you paid life this way. This effect reduces only the amount of blue mana you pay. Whenever you cast a blue spell or a blue permanent spell, draw a card. It is a 4/3 for 5.
Yeah.
And it's flying. And you draw cards. I think it's not super duper good. It's not bad.
Yeah.
It's pretty middle of the road. It lets you generate a little bit of value.
It's card advantage and a cost reducer in 1 in mono blue. Granted, it's restricted to being on blue permanents to get the card draw.
Yeah.
And whatnot, but just imagine this in like a Merfolk tribal deck or something of that nature.
I was just about to mention that if you're running even as simple as a Cloudstone Curio in your Merfolk tribal deck, you're going to be able to generate pretty easy card draw. And you're in blue, so you're going to be able to generate card draw anyways.
But
the blue cost reduction sometimes just allows you to play a Triton Shore Stalker for free.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And it's also got a decent body on it as well.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty middle of the road on this card. But at the same time, it is a standard set. They're not going to be printing super duper well.
Well, nowadays.
Yeah, nowadays.
After the whole Throne of Eldraine debacle.
Yeah, but I think they're going to be a little bit more close to the chest with the power level of some of the cards that they print, especially at the rare slot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's kind of where I sit. Yeah. I can see this going in pretty much any mid-range blue deck.
Yeah, mid-range is where this will shine.
Christian, what's your blue card though?
Alrighty, so I picked out Vesuvan Diplomacy.
I think so. I'm not good at reading.
Yeah, okay. Vesuvan Diplomacy is a 3 and a blue enchantment, and it has whenever you cast a spell that targets only a single artifact or creature you control, create a token that's a copy of that artifact or creature, except it's non-legendary. So I picked this because I run a little more casual Ovar the All-Form deck. And this is basically the same ability as his, except it's only restricted to creatures and artifacts.
Yeah.
But the redundancy and being able to make the token copy non-legendary is really cool. So this is going right into my Orvar deck, and this will allow me to make token copies of Orvar himself, and that's just going to snowball into some crazy nonsense.
Yeah, that and even making token copies of that enchantment too.
Yeah, with Orvar.
I'm surprised it's not a legendary enchantment.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if it was legendary enchantment, only because it is copying things. And when you give things the ability to copy, and there's no downside to it copying, say, itself through another effect that would copy it.
Yeah.
I just see exponential value to basically it's like Spellslinger with 1,000-Year Storm out.
Yeah.
When you get enough of them, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm super excited to see that card in play. I probably personally won't play it, only because
it's very niche.
It's niche, but I think there's enough of a niche for it to be viable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like it's very, like I said, it's very niche. But there's like a bunch of decks this can go into. Not only Orvar, like one of our buddies down at the card shop, he was telling me he was building a Calamax pump spell deck.
Oh yeah,
this would go great in that.
Yep. I think it would go decent in Brutaclad. For him copying tokens and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Having this out would definitely, you'd be able to copy Brutaclad, if I'm thinking of it correctly. But
yeah,
I haven't played Brutaclad ever, and last time I saw one in play was forever ago.
Yeah,
but
last time I saw one was when that Precon came out. I think that was the 2018 ones.
Yeah, but it's a good card. I mean, people build commanders around him, so
yeah. So why don't we move on to the black cards we picked out today? So
the black card I picked, we just did an episode on. So if you guys haven't listened to our first episode,
yeah, it was our first episode,
was a deck tech on Shieldred the Apocalypse. Shieldred is flipping amazing. Let me read her for you. It is Shieldred the Apocalypse, 2 black, legendary creature, Phyrexian Praetor. Death Touch. Whenever you draw a card, you gain 2 life. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life. Like I said.
And she's a 4/5 as well.
4/5. So big booty for 4 and has Death Touch and has an amazing triggered ability.
Yeah, and you can go back to our first episode and hear more about this, but there's so many cards that just go very well with this in the command zone. You can also just stick her in a Nekusar deck and...
Yes, she'll just generate value and make your Nekusar deck just flow like a lot better. Yeah, we talked about her so much in that episode, and there's so many cards that, like Christian had just mentioned, that just go amazing with her. So we're not going to spend too much time on her. If you really want to listen to an in-depth breakdown about it, we spend an hour and a half talking about her. So go eat it to your heart's content. But Christian, why don't you tell us about your black card? I know we talked a lot about Shieldred, but we didn't talk a lot about yours.
Yeah. So I picked out Braid's Artisan Nightmare. She is 1 black for a 3/3 legendary creature nightmare. And at the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker. If you do, each opponent may sacrifice a permanent that shares a card type with it. For each opponent who doesn't, that player loses 2 life and you draw a card. So every end step, just being able to sacrifice something, especially if you're in like an aristocrat shell or just wanting to sacrifice stuff in a deck, this is really good. And on top of that, just getting card advantage or draining your opponents is really good. Like if you're playing a Gitrog monster deck.
Yeah.
Just being able to sack a land, guarantee that you're drawing a card, and then having opponents have to decide whether they want to sack a land and
let you draw,
and having your opponents decide whether they want to sacrifice a land or lose 2 life and have you draw a card is going to be really good.
Yeah, and especially because if you have Gitrog out and Braids, I know we mentioned that we more so think of her in the 99. I feel like if you play as a commander, you're going to be playing more a Terragrid playstyle, where Terragrid will be in your...
Yeah, Terragrid would be awesome in this. It's basically guaranteed card draw or just stealing your opponent's stuff.
It's gonna be that line of deck where people are going to see a Braids and they're going to be like, oh, it's going to be that type of game. Whereas if you're playing Gitrog, people are going to be thinking lands, sacrificing your own lands, graveyard shenanigans. But then they see the braids land and they're like, oh, I see where this is going. We're in trouble.
Right.
So definitely an amazing card. Yeah,
it's definitely an awesome mid-range card.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to talk about some red cards now?
I just rebuilt my Mizzix of the Ismagus deck, and I'm loving it so far. I kind of forgot what Spellslinger was like after playing CDH for the past couple of years.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of toning back the power level. So I'm happy to talk about Jaya Fiery Negotiator. It is 2/2 red, legendary planeswalker Jaya. So stick with us while I walk through the upticks and the downticks. Planeswalkers are books, and I'll try not to pick more in the future, but she's pretty good. Jaya Fiery Negotiator. 2/2 red, legendary planeswalker Jaya. She has 4 loyalty to begin with. Her uptick is create a 1/1 red monk creature token with prowess, which is pretty decent. Her -1 is exile the top 2 cards of your library. Choose one of them. You may play that card this turn. Her -2 is choose target creature an opponent controls. Whenever you attack this turn, Jaya Fiery Negotiator deals 2 damage equal to the number of attacking creatures. Her -2 is choose target creature an opponent controls. Whenever you attack this turn, Jaya Fiery Negotiator deals damage equal to the number of attacking creatures to that creature. Her -8, you get an emblem. Whoa,
Yeah.
You get an emblem. With whenever you cast a red instant or sorcery spell, copy it twice. You may choose new targets for the copies. That's pretty dang good.
Yeah.
I know emblems in general are super good. And not all of them are made equal, though. But I think this one, on a red card, you're making monks with prowess.
Yeah, she makes you body. She gives you card advantage. She gives you removal. And she gives you a really good emblem if you can ever get there.
Christian and I were talking a little earlier about this card. And the +1 to make a blocker, essentially.
That's just classic. You want that on a planeswalker. It protects itself.
Yep, which is what you want. You don't want like a Karn, like a young Karn or baby Karn, some people would say, with no protection, where you get the static ability and you get to play a card from exile or make someone's Jeweled Lotus a 0/0 and kill it.
His animating an artifact is until your next turn, so he technically does
protect himself, but
he can, but no one ever
but
does that.
That, and it's not an uptick. So wait, it is an uptick. It's an up 1.
Yep.
My apologies, y'all.
But I get what you're saying.
Yeah, you're not necessarily going to be using it to make a body with him. You're more so at a higher power table going to be trying to kill someone's mocks. You know what I mean?
Right. Or if they're playing Artifact Lance, you can hit one of those.
Yeah. But yeah, I really like Jaya. I know your red card is pretty spicy, though.
Yeah. So I picked out Runvelt Horde Master. He is 1 and a red for a 1/1 creature, Goblin Warrior.
Ooh.
Other goblins you control get +1/+1. Whenever Runvelt Horde Master or another goblin you control dies, exile the top card of your library. If it's a goblin creature card, you may cast that card until the end of your next turn. So I don't personally run any goblin decks, but this seemed really cool to me. Just being able to have a goblin lord that also gives you card advantage in your goblin deck is pretty sweet. Granted, you can't play lands from the ability or cast any other cards. You can only cast the goblin creatures. It's still really good, and the fact that it doesn't specify it has to be a non-token goblin, you can just run this in like a Krenko deck, and if you have your Skirk Prospector out, sack 10 goblins, float 10 red, and exile the top 10 of your library, and you can cast whatever goblins from among those exiled cards that you want, and I just think it's really cool.
Yeah, no, I think it's good value. Especially with them being a 2-drop.
Yeah, it fits the card advantage spot in red goblin decks that they're missing most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you really think about it, they're sacking themselves to either deal damage or generate mana. It's never really to draw cards. So
Yeah, so now we get all three.
yeah, I think it's pretty good. So
Yeah. Do we want to move on to the green cards?
my card is Defiler of Vigor. It is a 3 and 2 green, 6/6. So you're already getting a little bit of value. Creature Phyrexian Worm. Trample. As an additional cost to cast green permanent spells, you may pay 2 life. Those spells cost you 1 green less to cast if you paid life this way. This effect reduces only the amount of green mana you pay. Whenever you cast a green permanent spell, put a 1/1 creature on... Put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. Not put a 1/1 creature on each counter you control. I think this is awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's a 6/6 trample for 5. Cost reducer. And you anthem encounters instead of just buffs.
Yeah. I mean, it slots perfectly into Elf Ball. It's a cost reducer, so pretty much a ramp spell, which Elf Ball is full of, and it grows your board.
Yeah.
It's pretty much exactly what Elf Ball wants.
I think in my Elf Ball list, I would slot out Lysolana, which is a 2 and 2 green legendary elf warrior, where it has whenever you cast a elf spell, you make a 1/1 elf. I think that I would slot this in because it's cost reducer, big body for 1 more mana. Yes, it's not an elf, but the next 2-drop elf I cast is going to buff Morrowind, my commander, and all my other elves, which is going to in turn stop. It might prevent people from swinging at me because I only have 1/1s or 2/2s.
Right. Like the turn you cast this, you probably already have anywhere from like 5 to 10 elves on the board. And let's say you cast this and you're just like, oh, I'll play my Llanowar elf for free by paying 2 life. And now I just put like 10 more power on the board just by doing that.
Or I cast this with a Cloudstone Curio out, and I am able to go infinite with 1/1 counters on everything.
Right, as long as you have life to pay for that.
Exactly. Well, not even the life aspect. If I have the Wirewood Symbiote out with Morrowind and
that's a ton of extra steps and extra cards to do that. But I see what you're saying.
If you're digging for a win, if someone countered your Crater Hoof and your or your other creature-based strategy win, and you're just looking to try and get something through, that's definitely a way you could go through it. But
yeah, for sure.
I really like this card. I like the flavor, and I like that people are going to have to be looking out for something other than Crater Hoof in Commander, and especially in mono green decks.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us about your green card? I don't know if it's as good as Defiler Vigor, though. I'm just saying.
It's still pretty good. So I picked up Threats Undetected. It is a 2 and a green for a sorcery, and it has search your library for up to 4 creature cards with different powers and reveal them. An opponent chooses 2 of those cards, shuffle the chosen cards into your library, and put the rest into your hand. So it's just another creature tutor, but it lets you grab 2 with a bit of a downside for your opponent picking which 2 you get to keep out of the 4. I just think this is cool.
I think it's another good flavor with like Gifts Ungiven.
Yeah, this is like a green Gifts Ungiven, and
I
was thinking of the there's already a green Gifts Ungiven for lands. The what is it?
I forget.
Realms Uncharted.
Oh yes.
But yeah. I mean, with my or what were you gonna say?
No, I was just saying that I think this card's definitely better than Defiler of Vigor. It grabs all your 2 card combos in green or in creature based strategy wins.
Right. Like
or you'll grab a recursion from one of them. It's like a green intuition if you really think about it, without putting them into the graveyard, which is kind of a downside, but it's understandable why they would tune it like that.
Yeah, and like with a deck like my mono green deck, it's just a deck where my commander is a 2-card combo with 5 or 6 different cards in the entire deck. I just grab 4 of those cards and I get to keep 2 of the combo pieces. It's pretty good.
Same with Morrowind. You're just gonna grab your 4 pieces that go infinite and call it a day for 3 mana.
Yeah.
And is this at instant speed or sorcery speed?
It is a sorcery.
It's understandable. Being able to do this on someone's like end step is pretty nutty. But,
yeah. Do we want to move on to multicolor?
Yeah, I'll try my hand at multicolor. Multicolor commander, or legendary creature I picked is Lagomos, Hand of Hatred. Oh gosh. I just made a dad joke and I'm not a father yet. It is 1 black. It's 1, a black and a red legendary creature, human shaman. Please don't ever let me do that again. Yeah. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 2/1 red elemental creature token with trample and haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Tap. Search your library for a card. Put it into your hand. Then shuffle. Activate only if 5 or more creatures died this turn. So I see this as going multiple. It is a 1/3 as well. I see this kind of going multiple ways. You can play your like empty the warrens and stuff like that to generate mass amounts of tokens and then having sacrifice outlets on board, or you can try and do a group hug strategy. I don't know if there's any support for a group hug strategy like that to give other people creatures in black red. But board wipe tribal is also certainly something that you could do, or direct damage tribal. But it's kind of limited. It's not a super good card.
I think this just squeezes into like Mardu aristocrats, where you're easily going to be sacrificing that many creatures a turn, so you can just keep tutoring for more value.
Yeah. Or in like Kelsien, if you're able to slot this on the Kelsien anywhere for tutoring and stuff on a creature. Mm-hmm. Kelsien with a Thornbite Staff, usually Thornbite Staff and a Basilisk Collar usually kills multiple things a turn. So you just kill 5 things, tutor, and then at that point, if you already have Basilisk Collar and Thornbite Staff, you're a pretty good chance that you're already winning that game.
Right.
But yeah, I'm not super duper high on it. I'm not super duper low on this card. I think it sits on the lower end of mid-range. Just a good value 99 piece.
Yeah.
For the niche decks that it would fit into.
Yeah, of course.
I see your multicolor commander. I'm quite interested.
Yeah. So I picked out Maria, Scholar of Antiquity. She is a 1 red and a green for a 3/3 legendary creature elf artificer, and she has tap and untapped non-token artifact you control, add 1 green. Tap 2 untapped non-token artifacts you control, exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. So if you haven't listened to or watched it yet, we did do an episode doing a deck tech on her. I built a pretty competitive CDH list with her, and she is just really cool.
Yeah. And you made like an entire flushed out deck for this too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's an entire deck list. I can stick the link in the description.
Yeah, I think that whether you put it here or definitely go and look at the past episode to kind of get a better understanding of where we want to take this commander and what you can really do with it to break the bounds of Gruul artifacts.
Right. So I think this is like one of those cards that just becomes better the higher power level you go.
Yeah.
In casual, this is going to be like a kind of a fun jank commander. It gives you mana acceleration and card advantage, but once you get to the CDH level where you're playing artifact stacks pieces that become one-sided when you tap them, this is just going to be really, really fun.
Yeah, I agree with you. The higher the power level, the more high on the card I get. The general overall value that you're going to be able to generate out of it early game is super, super good. So yeah, like we said, we talked about this card a lot.
Yeah. If you want to hear a little more on our take on the card, go ahead and check out the previous episode.
Yeah, and we talked to quite a few people through Reddit and other streams of media, along with conversing with our local play groups. And we kind of wanted to emulate what we've picked up from the past 4 days because it hasn't been out very long.
Yeah, at the time of recording this episode, this set has been fully spoiled for 4 days now.
Yeah, so we definitely talked to a lot of people to try and help us wrap our heads around it and try and see the best viable strategies for it. So definitely go check out that episode.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about artifacts now?
Yeah, so the artifact I want to talk about is Relic of Legends. It is a 3-drop artifact. It is tap, add 1 mana of any color, and tap an untapped legendary creature you control, add 1 mana of any color. So recently, I've been delving into a mono red Magda Clock of Omens combo deck list. I think that this card, it wouldn't necessarily fit in there, but if you're playing a more casual mid-range deck of Magda, where you're trying to value out a bunch of big dragons and stuff like that, I definitely see this card generating quite a bit.
Just having more ways to tap Magda to make treasure tokens.
Effectively, this is tap Magda, generate 2 mana. Or if you have Zorn out, you're making 2 treasures instead. So you just a lot of good value generation in mid-range levels. Like I said, I wouldn't play this necessarily in the CEDH list that I'm building because the slots that are allowed for changing are so minimal. A 3-drop artifact isn't really going to fit. But I think in mid-range, 3-drop artifacts should be played a little more. And this one, adding a mana of any color and being able to tap legendary creatures is really good, especially like if you're playing legendary tribal with Essica or a creature like Sisay.
I was going to bring that up. The first deck I thought about when I saw this card was Sisay Weatherlight Captain. She has an activated ability of it costs white, blue, black, red, green, and then you search your library for a legendary permanent card with converted mana cost less than Sisay's power, and then put it onto the battlefield, and she gets +1/+1 for each other legendary you control, or for each color among legendary permanents you control. So the first thing I thought about with this is you run a intruder alarm, and you just keep grabbing legendary creatures, and then you get to the point where you can tap your legendary creatures for mana, and you grab another legendary creature. Intruder alarm triggers and untaps all your other creatures, and you can just grab every legendary creature out of your deck with Sisay.
Yeah, I think that this relic, and that would be a competitive list. Like that could certainly be a list that does well at a 8 to 9 power level table.
Yeah, granted it is a 3-card combo, but one of the pieces is in your command zone.
Exactly, which always makes it a little bit
easier.
Yeah, win through commander, as some people like to call it, or win staple in command zone.
Right.
I'm really excited about your artifact. I know I was going to pick it, but we didn't want to pick the same one because we wanted to give you guys a
good look at the set.
A good look at the set and kind of what some of the more powerful stuff that you might see in your area or in your meta. So why don't you share what you got for us?
Yeah, so I picked out Karn Silex. It is 3 mana for a legendary artifact. Karn Silex enters the battlefield tapped, and players can't pay life to cast spells or activate abilities. And players can't pay life to cast spells or activate abilities that aren't mana abilities. It also has X and tap, exile Karn Silex to destroy each non-land permanent with mana value X or less. Activate only as a sorcery. So this is another one of those cards that's going to scale better in the higher end games. Just having players not be able to pay life to cast spells or activate abilities shuts off Keurig decks or shuts off fetch lands, necropotents, a lot of stuff you're going to see in those types of games. And just being able to crack the last ability for a couple mana and just blow up all your opponents' mana rocks, mana dorks, stacks pieces is going to be pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's a good card. I think it's definitely one I'm considering putting in my Urza stacks, kind of just to combat Necropotence lines and other things that get inherent value through paying life to cast things.
Yeah, and one of the more flavorful things I realized about this card is when you activate it to blow up all non-land permanents with mana value X or less, it exiles itself. So you can use Karn, the Great Creator, to grab it again from exile.
No, I'm super happy that a card like that got printed. I think it'll do good. I think it'll keep the meta healthy.
Right. So do we want to move on to our last couple cards here in the lands category?
Yeah, I know they didn't really print a lot of different lands.
At least new lands.
Yeah, at least new ones. We did get some reprints. We got the Painland reprints with some extended arts and some foils.
They look really cool.
They look really nice. Some of the Painlands, some of the original ones were kind of getting up there in price, kind of out of reach for some people who were trying to make a relatively cheap deck but needed to fix mana. So this is definitely going to be one of the cheaper ways that you're able to fix your mana in your deck whilst also still staying slightly competitive with them not coming in tapped.
Yeah, I was going to say having the right colors of mana is really important, and the fact that you can get this on a pretty cheap cost-wise, the fact that you can get this on a land that's pretty cheap money-wise, is gonna be pretty good.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
And I believe we only got 5 of them in this set, and I almost guarantee that they'll have the other cycle. I almost guarantee that they will have the other cycle in the next set, Brothers War.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Yeah. And the card I picked out, it's not... And the card I picked out is not super great, but it's worth talking about, is Thran Portal. It is a land with the subtype Gate. And it enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or fewer other lands. As Thran Portal enters the battlefield, choose a basic land type. Thran Portal is the chosen type in addition to its other types. Mana abilities of Thran Portal cost an additional 1 life to activate. So it's a gate. It's going to play in your Maze's Index.
Yeah.
And it's a fast land while also playing kind of like the flip lands, but being able to be all 5 colors with the relevant type. And also kind of a pain land because
you pay a life to use it. So
it's a combination of like 3 different land cycles. So it's got quite a few downsides, but being able to pick one out of any of the 5 colors when you just play it and have it come in untapped early in the game is pretty good.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the Thriving lands that were printed in Jumpstart.
Yeah. It's half of a Thriving land. You only get to pick 1 color, but the fact that it's pretty versatile and comes in untapped is awesome.
Yeah, most definitely. I think overall, our list we definitely could have picked cards of multiple color. Like, there were quite a few green cards that I know I was looking at, but we wanted to give you guys the best net for knowing the new cards that were coming out and kind of the ones to look for. At least that's how I feel, Christian. I don't know how about you feel, but
it's just we just wanted to give you guys our opinion on some of the cards coming out, what to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, I think that's that's my list. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
Yeah, no, that's pretty much all I was looking at this set so far. And I think we covered all that we wanted to cover. So
yeah.
But yeah, this about wraps up this episode. If there's any cards you guys really liked and we didn't talk about, go ahead and leave it in the comments. And
yeah, we'll definitely try, and I at least like reading your guys' comments.
And we would really appreciate it if you follow or subscribe, leave a like. It really helps us out a ton.
But yeah, I think that's it from us here at the Mana Drain Podcast. And we hope you guys have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you next time.
Yep. Have a good one.
See ya.